This is part 2 of my Three Nite P30 build video. In this video, I'm going to discuss tools, adhesives, and building boards that you should have available not only for building this model, but for building additional free flight balsa wood models in the future. Now, the picture that's shown right here has a number of items laid out that you might find useful, and I'm going to point them out using my cursor here. So this is what they call a razor saw. It has very fine teeth for cutting balsa wood, both sheets and sticks. This is a miter box that comes with the saw, so if you want to saw, for example, at a 90-degree angle, it'll be perfect, or a 45-degree angle, it'll be perfect. This is a balsa wood stripper. This is a tool that's used to strip sticks from balsa wood sheets. Typically, those sheets are 3 inches long by 36 inches in length. 3 inches wide by 36 inches in length. Here's a close-up picture of the Master Air Screw balsa wood stripper. It's available on Amazon. It's very inexpensive. You have a X-Acto blade, which is held here with 2 screws. This is a knob that is used to adjust the distance between this blade and the base of the stripper, which determines the width of the stick that you're stripping from this sheet. Instead of using a ruler to measure this gap, let's say you're stripping a 3/32 by 3/32 square strip. If you have a scrap of that, you could stick it in this region between the blade and the base, and then turn the dial until the blade is snug but not tight against that scrap piece of wood. So here we have a balsa wood cutter. This is has a hinged handle on it with a straight edge razor blade. That's the type you see in scrapers. This adjusts an angle. If you want to do 72 degrees, for example, you can. I believe you can also buy this inexpensive cutter on Amazon. Certainly other hobby shops online carry it. Here we have a X-Acto blade set. Everybody knows what this is. These are tools that are handy. Some wire cutters, needle nose pliers, straight pliers, small scissors. Here we have a metal ruler, which is got a cork backing, and that's very handy because you can run a X-Acto blade along here and cut straight lines over balsa wood sheet, etc. You can do the same with Japanese tissue. This is an emery board for sanding. Small paintbrush, a larger paintbrush with very soft bristles. Here we have a right angle triangle. Then sanding blocks are always good. I make them myself. I usually take a piece of scrap wood and I glue different grades of sandpaper, anywhere from 80 grit all the way up to 220 grit, and maybe even higher in some cases. The higher the number being, the finer the sanding. Over here we have Elmer's white glue. Everybody knows what that is. Acetone, you can buy this at Ace Hardware. It's very inexpensive. Duco glue. This is my favorite go-to glue. Duco glue or Duco cement is a particular type of cement called nitrocellulose glue. It's been around for decades. If I'm not mistaken, it was one of the original adhesives sold by the company that became what we know as DuPont. You can buy it at Ace Hardware Store, Walmart. It's very inexpensive. I prefer to mix it 50-50 with acetone to make it thinner. The beauty of this glue is that You have several minutes to position items before they glue together, that is, balsa wood pieces. And once they're dry, the bond is quite strong. And if you don't like that bond, you can simply put a little bit of acetone in this cap, for example, take this paintbrush and paint the glue joint over several minutes, and eventually the glue will dissolve and you can undo those two pieces and either replace the piece or glue them back together or whatever you decide. For many years, modelers used a cement called Amdroid, or excuse me, uh, it was called Ambroid, I think, and it was kind of a peach or orange color. It was also a nitrocellulose glue that could be thinned with acetone. I don't believe it's being made any longer. I highly recommend using Amdroid glue, which you can buy from Valari Products. The beauty of this product is that it's basically a thinned nitrocellulose glue. It comes in a very convenient squeeze dispensing bottle with a screw-on cap. It has a stainless steel tube here for dispensing the glue, the thinned glue, and then there's a little cap for the needle, which is held on by this cord. I suppose you could call that a tether. It's handy to have a pin, a very small diameter piece of music wire, 0.025 inches or less, because from time to time this can become jammed with dried glue and you'll need to clear it. In rare cases, I use cyanoacrylate glue, otherwise known as CA, otherwise known as super glue. It's available in various viscosities or thicknesses. I tend to use the medium viscosity for joints that I really want to be strong. The problem with this glue is that you have very little setting time, maybe 20 or 30 seconds, and then it's going to be hardened. And trying to break off that glue joint or break it apart is extremely difficult. And there are chemical debonders. They have some chemicals in them that I don't like to breathe in, so I don't use them. Be careful. Sometimes people buy very thin CA. It has a viscosity that's even thinner than water, at least in my opinion. It's great for joints where you really can't get access to it and you need it to weep in there. But be very, very careful. It'll stick to your fingers. It'll weep everywhere. Don't ever use it around shafts on propellers or bearings or anything like that. It'll glue them together and they will be done. A problem with CA is that it ages, and it's also very temperamental in terms of the ambient humidity. You can store your CA glue in a refrigerator if you have one. I have several that I store my rubber in. I would not store it in with food, but it does tend to keep a little longer. If you're lucky, you can have it last for about 6 months, then it goes bad. I've had CA last longer than that, but eventually you'll have a hard bottle and it'll be worthless. Another good brand of CA is from Loctite. I get the Loctite medium viscosity. It's in this blue bottle here. It's quite a good product. It will go hard though in 6 months. Here's the M-Droid glue from Valari Products. Here's a tiny little bottle that you can put acetone in if you need some. This is an interesting glue dispenser here. This is an enlarged picture showing the Micro Cimentour glue dispenser, which you can purchase from Indoor Free Flight Supply. The interesting part here is that this nozzle assembly has a clearing wire or an insertion wire. You can see it extends all the way through here. So you retract this with your fingers and it unplugs this dispensing tip. The metal ends up about here. Then you dispense your glue from this very narrow tip. When I say glue, I mean thinned Duco glue or the Android glue, which you can put in here. And then when you're done, you push this back forward and it seals the dispensing tip, and that prevents it from getting clogged. If it ever does get clogged, you just go back and forth with this clearing wire, and that takes care of the problem. The matchbox here, or the matchbook, is to show the scale. So you need to build the parts of the model over something that's very flat and firm. I have a old-fashioned card table here with a wooden top, and you need a building board to put on top of that to hold the parts. And traditionally, people have used a foam board or a cork board, and then they've used pins. I don't like that technique. It's very slow. I don't like pins. I don't like getting stuck with pins. You should never pin through pieces of an airplane. It weakens them. That means you should pin little scraps up next to them. That's very time consuming. But if that's what you have to do, at least use straight pins with the little round tops or the ones that have the little cylinders. Instead, I recommend this Magna Board product that you can buy from Easy Built Models. It's basically a piece of sheet metal, galvanized, with corners that have been truncated and they're filed and smoothed so you won't cut yourself. And then you have a bunch of very strong magnets. These are, I think they're 1 inch by 3/4 of an inch, and there's a big stack of them here. You can buy this from Easy Built Models online. You can buy your own piece of sheet metal at Home Depot, but the problem is by the time you buy that piece of sheet metal, cut it yourself, sand it or file it to get it so it isn't sharp. It may not be flat. It may have come off a roll, etc. Then you have to buy the magnets, and by that time you've already spent just as much or more money than you would have if you bought the Magna Board product. I think I gave you the dimensions of this piece of sheet metal, but let me just repeat, it's roughly 32 inches in length and about 13 inches in width. Now here's a copy of the plan for the Three Nite P30. This is an earlier version. There was a couple of gussets added. You can't see them because they're in they connect the outermost wing ribs to the leading edge, and that's been cut off in my video software here. Anyway, this is going to be laid on top of the building board, but if you just start building over this, all your parts will get glued to it, and that's not something that you want to happen. So here is how we solve that problem. We use non-stick parchment paper. I've got a ton of it here that we bought from Costco, and it's for baking, and it's a weird kind of paper. It has some kind of Teflon coating, but most glues won't stick to it, or they'll stick very, very lightly, so you can just kind of pick the piece off or the structure off, and it won't really damage it. CA sometimes will be a little bit more sticky, but again, you can just carefully lift the piece up gradually and it will tear away. So the first thing we do is lay the plan out on top of the metal Magna board and hold it with 4 magnets, one at each corner. It's kind of curly, etc. Then you're going to tear off a piece of parchment paper that's long enough to cover the entire plan, lift up those magnets, the 4 magnets, and put the parchment paper over the plan, and make sure there's no slack here. Put your magnets back down, and you're ready to start building. This picture shows the nightmare of building with pins on a cork board. You can do it, but Boy, it's a lot of extra work. So that wraps up this part of the video series that I've done on building the Three Nite P30. This final picture just shows where we're headed. This is some of the bones laid out on top of the magnetic building board, otherwise known as the Magna Board. So thanks again for watching. And in conclusion, we're going on to part 3, which will be assembling the fuselage, which is shown down here. Thank you for listening.